Thank you for watching the Mount Albert Ponsonby AFC return to play briefing around COVID-19 level 2. Why are we doing this? Well, New Zealand Football and Sport New Zealand have issued rules for all the teams to be able to return to play under level 2. Without following these rules, we will not be approved to train, we will not be able to use our fields. As part of that, we have to develop a plan, which this is, to demonstrate that we follow these rules, and we have to sign a declaration that we have that plan and show documentation that we've got this plan in place and that people have read and understood it. What are the rules? So these rules, we have to follow our contact tracing, so making sure that we record everyone that attends all sessions at the club and in the club rooms and at all of our training facilities. The size of the gathering has to be limited, so whether that's training indoors or outdoors, we can only have a maximum of 10 people in each group, and that includes players, officials, support staff, anyone else. This will be reviewed by the government on the 25th of May. We've got strict cleaning and hygiene rules that we need to follow. We have to look at physical distancing, and the most important rule is that if you are unwell, you stay home. You do not come to the club, you do not come to training, you do not leave the house. You make sure that you stay home. What is our contact tracing plan? Until New Zealand Football release the method they want all clubs to use, we are going to be using ID.me from Sporty. Each person attending training or the club rooms will need to go to idme.co.nz and enter their contact details. When they do that, they'll have the option to save a custom QR code containing those details to their phone's home screen. It's just a share button at the bottom, add to home screen. When they arrive at one of the training fields or clubs, they open up that screen and they go to that, and there's a link at the top that says enter code manually. You do that and you enter in one of these codes below. So Anderson Park Training, Valonia's 1 and 2, the club rooms, and Allenwood Reserve to Cage. All players attending training must be registered in Comment. So if you have not registered yet, make sure that you are registered before you attend a training session. Each training bubble is to be a maximum of 10 people. It includes coaches, players, parents, anyone, support staff, anyone in training a training bubble is included in that 10 people. The nominated leader of that bubble will need to reiterate the rules at the start of each session. So if that's a coach, a captain, a player, whoever's in charge of that session must reiterate these rules at the start of each session. Those training sessions are going to be staggered so that teams aren't overlapping in the car park or on arrival and departure from training. Parents, friends, caregivers, etc., if they're dropping you off or coming with you in a car, they must remain in their car. Or if they're coming to the club, they can go to the club rooms. But if people outside your training bubble come up to you within your training bubble, you need to ask them to leave. There's to be no congregating in the car parks at any of our training venues. Once training is complete, you must either leave immediately or go up to the club rooms immediately. And bring a sweat towel. If you are, make sure that you are as hygienic as possible without showering, but make sure that you are going home or you're going to the club rooms if they are open. You are not to hang around a car park chatting and mingling between bubbles. When you will be training as an individual and what venue you'll be training at will be communicated to you once we've had that confirmed by the council. That will not happen until we have completed this plan and players have signed the declarations. You'll be provided with a map of where to go and how to avoid the other groups. So there might be areas we want you to just go in and how we want you to enter each field. You need to follow those instructions. You must turn up ready to train. There's going to be nowhere to get changed. So make sure you're in your kit and that you're ready to go. There may well be no bibs. So unless you've been allocated a bib that you are going to take with you and take home and clean yourself, you may not be given a bib. Coaches, where that isn't the case, will advise players to bring 2 shirts, one of one colour, one of another, so that you can do limited opposed training if need be. Again, that training will be within your bubble. All sessions should be able to be run by a player, so therefore they'll be simple and documented. So please design your sessions ahead of schedule so that people know what they're doing. Only one person in each training bubble is to handle any training equipment. This includes, but it's not limited to, cones, flags, balls, goals, nets, etc. Therefore, the full-size goals and nets are not to be used at this stage. To get them sanitized and use them, especially at Anderson Park, is going to be problematic. Valonia, potentially you can use them, but again, they need to be sanitized and only one person is going to be able to put the nets up. Equipment is not to be shared between bubbles without being cleaned. So that means that before and after each use, the equipment has to be sanitized. So if you've got 2 bubbles in a squad that are sharing training gear, that training gear must be cleaned by the team that are finishing and then cleaned again when the other team are using it. So making sure that it is clean and sanitized. Hand sanitizer will be provided to teams. If equipment, i.e. balls, accidentally moves from one bubble to the other, so someone has a shot and it goes miles away and goes into the other bubble, you're not to follow the ball and break into that bubble. Wait for the ball to be passed back, and then that ball must be cleaned before it's used again. Okay, there is to be no moving between training bubbles. There will be hand sanitizer placed in locations around the club and the fields to be used. For those training on fields other than Anderson Park, we will provide you hand sanitizer. It must be used if you're not washing your hands, which you should be, but if you can't, for some reason, for instance at Valonia the changing rooms and toilets might be locked, use hand sanitizer on arrival and departure. At Anderson Park, where we have control, the referee's changing room at Anderson Park will be open, and for access only to the toilet and the sink where there'll be soap and hand towels available. The rest of the changing room will be cordoned off, so the shower will be closed, the benches will be closed, no other rooms are going to be open for use. And after each training session, the sink and toilet must be sanitized by one person from the relevant bubble. There will be a roster published for this. Once the change rooms are open for use at a later date, possibly after the 25th, the showers and all hard surfaces must be disinfected after each use and potentially in between games once we start playing. That disinfectant and sanitizer will be supplied, as will the method of use. When you're going to use the toilets or anything along those lines, please stay at least 2 meters away from people outside of your training bubble, making sure that you line up and that there's a gap. You're not trying to cram into a room where other people are. For venues other than Anderson Park, we expect it to be really unlikely that changing facilities will be open there. Please ensure you follow the same protocols regarding hand washing and hand cleaning and distance from people not in your bubble. Treat all venues the same. Injuries and rehab. If there is to be no physio treatment at Anderson Park during this stage. If you need to see Nathan or the club physio, please book an appointment at his clinic where he will have his own protocols in place. So there'll be no access to the changing rooms for physio treatment. If an injury occurs on the field, people within the bubble can look after that person, but then they're not to call other people into their bubble to provide treatment. They treat as best they can. If emergency services need to be called, then that happens. We're not to call people over from other bubbles. You must check in when entering the club rooms via ID Me. Even if you've checked in for training, we have a different ID Me code for the club rooms. We're covered by slightly different rules. One is covered by the sport rules, one is Ministry of Health for Hospitality. Inside those club rooms, there will be no more than groups of 10 congregated together, as per any other hospitality establishment. And all the requirements that the Ministry of Health has given us for rules around a bar, which is can only be table service, etc., those rules will be followed at Anderson Park club rooms. So what do we need to do to be compliant? So all players, coaches, parents and support staff must comply with these rules. It's not optional. Before a player, coach, parent or support staff person is allowed to attend a training session, they must have watched this briefing. To indicate that you have done so, please go to the link in this presentation that will also be shared to you with your coach and confirm that you've watched, understood and will comply. You also on that form will tell us what team you're part of. Until you've completed that form, you will not be allowed to attend training. And breach of these rules will be treated really seriously. So the first time you make a mistake or breach one of the level 2 rules, you'll be warned. and you'll be told, this can't be done, and that warning will be documented. The second time a rule is breached by the same person, there'll be a 1-week ban from all club activities and venues. The third time you breach a rule, you will be banned indefinitely from club activities and venues, likely until we're back in level 1, or even once lockdown or all of the rules are cleared. Because if you can't be trusted to behave and treat the rules and respect others, we can't have you endangering other people and our ability to play football, because that's what we all want to do. Thank you for attending and watching this briefing, and I hope we can all get back to playing football and having some fun soon.